Earlier this school year, I read Tom Engelberger's The Strange Case of Origami Yoda to my 2nd and 3rd grade students. And when we had finished, I knew that I was in trouble because my students were begging me to make their own origami Yodas. And if there's one thing I've learned over the years, it's that origami is the absolute most stress-inducing activity you can do with elementary age students. So after about 30 minutes of, is this right, and how do I do this, I could tell that emotions in the room were running really high. There were crumpled pieces of paper all over the floor, and I could tell that tears were just around the corner. So I had my students stop and reflect and talk about the difficulties that they were having. They said, you know, I'm having trouble reading and understanding the directions. I'm having trouble folding the paper accurately, and I'm not getting the individual help that I need. So I decided to shift the conversation, and we started to discuss how the activity related to our lives as learners. My students said things like, we won't always get things right on the first try, and that's absolutely normal. If something is challenging, it's okay to get frustrated. And if something is confusing, we should seek clarification and ask specific questions. So by the end of the day, they were feeling a lot better about their origami experience. And as we left, we triumphantly held our pathetic-looking origami Yodas above our heads, and we dropped the F-bomb. We declared our failure, and we were proud of it. The next day, however, something amazing happened. I overheard 2 of my students talking to each other during a math problem. And one girl leaned over to her friend and said, "That was a perfect fail. I am so proud of you." And it was at that exact moment when I realized the importance of embracing failure as a learning model for our students. Fear of failure is a wicked problem facing the traditional education system. Fear paralyzes both teachers and students, preventing us from taking risks and trying new approaches in our classrooms. It also squelches creativity in our classrooms because safe and ineffective methods are the path of least resistance. But the more I think about this wicked problem, the more I see that there is a key difference between failing teachers and teachers who fail. When we talk about failing teachers, we're talking about teachers that it stirs up a lot of negative emotions and connotations. Failing teachers are all over the media, and they are so easy to blame. They are perceived as being static and jaded and resistant to change. But when we're focusing on a failing teacher, we're zeroing in on a lack of growth, and we're attacking who that educator is as a person. And that is exactly the definition of failure from which we need to move away. However, if you just flip the words failing and teacher around, the whole game changes. Teachers who fail are those who routinely take risks in the classroom and spur innovation in our schools. They are connected, forward-thinking individuals, and they are educators making thoughtful and calculated decisions that have long-lasting and meaningful impact. At the very core of this wicked problem are perspective and action. Failing teachers are those who doubt, and teachers who fail are those who do. To solve this wicked problem, I propose that we and the NMC work to transform failing teachers into teachers who fail, utilizing the emerging technologies and practices that we know will have the greatest impact. To do this, we have to acknowledge 3 very real and difficult realities facing K-12 educators. The first reality is that failure is often misinterpreted as losing. In my classroom, a fail, no matter how big or small, is always seen as a first attempt in learning. My students know that mistakes and missteps are just a natural and healthy part of the learning process, and that we can't take it personally. When we intentionally shift the focus to what has been gained, failure no longer implies loss. Our first priority as educators should be to create spaces that celebrate and support all aspects of learning and collaboration. These spaces should focus on relationship building, not just with each other, but with individuals as lifelong learners. Self-reflection guides and refreshes our relentless passion for education and encourages change within our schools. Trusting learners with the power of choice deeply motivates us to succeed. The technology tools simply amplify an individual's voice and make learning more efficient and meaningful. Allowing all learners to create personalized learning environments where they feel safe to take risks and apply new strategies, and while feeling equally supported by their peers and mentors. The second reality we need to face is that failure takes intentional practice. Luckily, the game-based learning model allows students to fail faster and practice more. I studied music during my undergraduate years, spending several hours every day in a practice room. The whole point of practicing is to let the mistakes guide you towards the adjustments needed to improve and transform. That's where the business mantra of failing fast intrigues me. One of the luxuries that I don't have as a classroom teacher, though, is time. We all know that most schools are slow and reluctant to change, but if something isn't working, let's not keep trying to make it work. Applying the fail fast model allows students to analyze their missteps quickly and move forward with purpose. Further, knowing what motivates and drives a student is the most important renewable resource to which educators have access. Game-based learning is a perfect way to harness this student interest. This learning model allows my students to learn through experience and play. It also allows my students to specifically target and practice skills through repetition and acquire knowledge to meet personalized learning goals. It also allows their weaknesses to be developed using strengths, and it gives them specific feedback to improve. Most importantly, this learning model changes my students' dialogue from I can't to I can't yet. Finally, the third reality we need to embrace is that failure makes us vulnerable. Exposing our hearts and minds might not always make us feel comfortable, but it ultimately allows us to connect with each other in authentic and meaningful ways. Challenge-based learning has the potential to address this reality. This learning model spurs students to think globally while acting locally. It encourages my students to think beyond their classroom walls while requiring incredible amounts of creative thinking and collaboration. Creating networks of learners all over the world that can readily support and communicate with each other is absolutely critical. When we provide such spaces, our vulnerabilities can actually empower us, fuel our passions, and open us up to unexpected possibilities. K-12 professional development needs to reflect these changing environments that we want to see in our own classrooms. I gravitate towards Twitter and unconferences because they provide choice and differentiation. Just as challenge-based learning inspires my students, these unconventional PD opportunities inspire me to think differently and act. The truth is that learning is always at the center of failure. When we embrace failure and harness it to make smart educational choices, we enable all learners to become innovative and passionate thinkers, ready to tackle unknown challenges. And when this process is started with our very youngest learners, it becomes a mindset. Emerging technologies simply make failure more efficient, relevant, and empowering. To spur far-reaching change, actual classroom teachers need to be able to connect and collaborate with each other. One dream I have is to create a space where all teachers can digitally clear their failures. I envision it to be a place like the NMC Commons meets Cheeseburger's Fail blog, meets Post Secret, meets Pinterest. It will be a place to connect all learners to an expansive and innovative network. With the right attitude and willingness to work, the struggles of learning can truly transform any individual. We will turn doubters into doers with the emerging technologies and practices we know will have the greatest impact. Thank you.